in a magical land called New York City.
My dad works there?
Empire State Building.
I will never forget the first time I watched Elf in the little theatre in my hometown, a night so cold everyone shuffled inside just to escape the wind. I only hoped to feel a bit of Christmas spirit, but the moment Buddy appeared with those bright eyes, like a child seeing magic for the very first time, the entire theatre fell silent. I felt as if I'd been locked to the screen, unable to look away from every innocent, fluttery movement he made. When the film ended, people walked out carrying an energy that's hard to explain, lighter, warmer, and somehow a little more willing to believe in magic. But what I didn't know, not until many years later, was that behind that feeling of lightness was a backstage full of chaos surprises and near disasters that almost stopped Elf from ever existing. A version of Elf once written to be edgy dark and completely magic-free. An iconic singing scene that didn't even exist in the script. An actor who was sugar poisoned daily until he nearly threw up. And a $29 million offer for Elf 2 rejected in seconds. So let's unwrap that backstage Christmas gift, 20 wild truths that made Elf the unforgettable holiday miracle of Hollywood. 20. Farley's lost elf never actually existed. You remember the image of Buddy the Elf, bright-eyed, pure-hearted, running through New York, as if Christmas had never lost its magic. For many people, Elf is a Christmas card that laughs, which is why learning that the film once nearly didn't have the Buddy we love was genuinely shocking. Beneath its sweetness, there once existed a darker, rougher version of Elf with a completely different energy. A version that, had it been made, would have changed our Christmas memories forever. In 1993, screenwriter David Berenbaum wrote the first draft specifically for Chris Farley. It had a PG-13, sharp-edged, chaotic buddy comedy tone, none of the innocence or magic that made Elf a classic. Buddy was an unruly adult, not a childlike soul glowing from within. A story far removed from the cosy Christmas feeling audiences hoped for. So Jon Favreau decided to tear it down and rebuild it. He drew inspiration from Rankin Bass specials like Rudolph and Santa Claus is Coming to Town, wooden toys, cotton ball snow, soft pastel colours, a North Pole that looked like it stepped out of childhood memory. But the real turning point was Buddy himself. Favreau reinvented him from a snarky adult into a pure-hearted child trapped in a grown man's body, the very energy that melted even New York's cynicism. Favreau didn't just rewrite the screenplay, he rewrote the soul of Elf, and that's why its Christmas magic endures. 19. A duet that rewrote Jovie's entire character. Anyone who has seen Elf remembers the moment Buddy stands outside the bathroom door wide-eyed, listening to Jovie sing, "Baby, it's cold outside." Soft, warm, a little awkward, beautifully human. The wild part? This moment that feels like it belongs to Elf was never in the script. Looking back, even the crew was surprised. Zooey Deschanel said that when she was cast as Jovie at the last minute, no one planned for her to sing. Favreau recalled overhearing her singing while waiting on set and stopping in his tracks. Not using that voice would be a waste. He rewrote an entire sequence just to create that moment. And that's how a completely new scene was born. Gentle, unflashy, but destined to become a modern Christmas movie classic. It didn't just deepen the story, it reshaped how audiences saw Jovie, not just Buddy's love interest, but the one who helped Elf find its emotional heartbeat. 18. The sugar frenzy that almost wrecked Will Ferrell. I still remember watching Elf for the first time during a cozy year-end family night and laughing constantly. But there was one scene that made everyone gasp, Buddy stuffing spaghetti covered in syrup into his mouth, or downing an entire bottle of soda in one breath. What almost no one knew was that behind those hilarious moments was Will Ferrell's real-life nightmare. Ferrell ate everything for real sugar, real calories, and very real consequences. The price was a barrage of symptoms, headaches, nausea, insomnia, and the sensation that his entire body was riding a Christmas light decorated roller coaster without brakes. And yet, he refused fake props, refused to cut the scenes, determined that every overjoyed, absurd facial expression from Buddy be 100% genuine. And thanks to that sugar-driven torment, Buddy became the explosive, wide-eyed, unforgettable holiday icon everyone loves. 17. Buddy's New York rampage was 100% real. No extras, no staging. If you've seen Elf, you surely remember the montage of Buddy roaming Manhattan, waving at taxis like old friends, hugging strangers as if they were long-lost family, hopping across crosswalk lines with pure, unfiltered joy. It feels so authentic that viewers assume it was carefully choreographed. But the truth is even crazier. There were 0 extras in that sequence. A crew member recalled Favreau told us, "Cut everything. Just me, the cameraman, and Will. No permits, no warnings. We're dropping Buddy into real New York City and seeing what happens." And so, Will Ferrell in a bright green elf suit walked straight into the real Manhattan crowd without any protection. The reactions 100% real. Some people jumped when Buddy hugged them out of nowhere. Others froze at the sight of a 6'3" elf sprinting toward them to pick up a dropped flyer. A taxi driver even waved back at Buddy like he was some new street mascot. Favreau wanted that authenticity the exact moment Buddy truly enters the human world. And the spontaneous, bewildered, joyful reactions of New Yorkers became one of the most iconic sequences in Elf. 16. The haunted hospital where Christmas was assembled. When watching Elf, no one imagines that all those warm, cozy locations, the DNA testing room, Walter's apartment, the Gimbals' toy department, the mailroom, the jail cell, were actually built inside a place completely opposite in Tone Riverview Hospital, an abandoned psychiatric hospital in Vancouver. And the creepiest part, only a few weeks before the Elf crew moved in, the building had been used to film Freddy vs. Jason. The hallway where Buddy cheerfully runs around had once been the place where Freddy Krueger hunted his victims. Buddy's DNA test room had been a torture chamber in a horror movie. Several crew members recalled that the atmosphere there felt unnaturally cold, but Favreau loved it because the space was huge, easy to build sets in, and cheap. The result was an unintentionally hilarious contrast. One of Hollywood's warmest Christmas movies was assembled inside one of the creepiest filming locations New Line Cinema had ever used. A layer of Christmas magic was created, right on top of the remnants of nightmares. 15. Ralphie was hiding in plain sight. I still remember the first time Head Elf walked into the frame. That small figure, the stern but gentle voice, the patient eyes he always gave Buddy. No one noticed anything unusual. To us, he was simply the strict but warm elf every Christmas movie needs. Years later, re-watching the Blu-ray, I randomly stumbled upon a tiny trivia line, Head Elf, played by Peter Billingsley. And I nearly jumped out of my seat. Peter Billingsley, Ralphie, the glasses-wearing kid from A Christmas Story, the boy who wished for the legendary BB gun. It turns out that right in front of us, a Christmas icon of the 1980s quietly appeared inside the Christmas classic of the 2000s. A double-layered cameo from a child longing for the perfect Christmas gift, to a clipboard carrying no-nonsense but warm-hearted elf supervisor. No explanation, no spotlight, just a gentle passing of the torch between 2 generations of Christmas films, so subtle that countless fans, even those who re-watch the movie every year, never realised it. 14. The scene that caused real chaos in the Lincoln Tunnel. Some behind-the-scenes facts make you look at a familiar movie scene in a completely new way. For me, it was learning that the moment Will Ferrell walks through the Lincoln Tunnel in a bright green elf costume actually caused a mild traffic disturbance in New York City. Not because of visual effects, not because of extras, but because real drivers were genuinely stunned to see a 6'3" elf walking through moving traffic. One crew member recalled, "We just wanted to grab a few quick shots, but as soon as drivers saw Buddy, they started craning their necks like they'd spotted a mythical creature." The result? A few minor fender benders, several sudden brakes, and dozens of confused faces sticking out of car windows. Ferrell himself was both embarrassed and amused when he heard about it. I wasn't sure whether to be proud I got that much attention, or apologise to everyone. No serious accidents occurred, but the story became the perfect proof even just walking Buddy had the power to make all of New York skip a beat. A very elf-style kind of magic. 13. The North Pole was built by hand. There's a moment in Elf when you sense the light in the North Pole scenes feels unlike anything in modern movies. Softer, warmer, and, charmingly, handmade. Later, I learned that wasn't accidental. Favreau deliberately rejected CGI, choosing instead the old-school hands-on techniques of Christmas specials from the 60s and 70s. The snow was hand-sprinkled fake snow. The toy workshop was built from real wood. The icy houses were hand-painted matte backgrounds. Even the North Pole skyline was a practical miniature. Most remarkable was the forced perspective technique. Buddy looks taller than the elves, not because of CGI, but because Will Ferrell stood closer to the camera while the elf actors stood farther away. Everything was handcrafted precise, and most importantly, imperfect on purpose. A slightly crooked set, keep it. Snow edges, looking rough, even better. Those imperfections made the North Pole in Elf timeless, not because it looks real, but because it looks like our childhood memory of Christmas, the kind no CGI could ever truly recreate. 12. The Santa brawl that was filmed in one single take. If there's any scene in Elf that proves the film was willing to take risks, it's the chaotic brawl between Buddy and the fake Santa at Gimbals. You remember the madness, right? Toys exploding, skyscraper models collapsing, candy canes flying like artillery. Everything happens so fast it feels like real, uncontrollable chaos. And that's because it was real chaos. Every piece of the set, the candy walls, the toy train tracks, the miniature city was handcrafted over several weeks solely for one single shot. The moment Buddy charged in, everything was meant to collapse. No rebuilding, no second take, no stunt team waiting to reset the disaster. Favreau stood behind the monitor and signalled, "Give it everything, this is our only chance." Will Ferrell and Artie Lang lunged at each other, and the rest became history. A brawl that looked wild, hilarious, and so authentic that audiences felt like they were watching hidden camera footage. That one-shot only setup turned the scene into one of Elf's most irreplaceable classics. 11. The Empire State Elevator scene is completely made up. If you've ever tried to recreate Buddy pressing 100 elevator buttons during your New York trip, my condolences, you will never find that elevator. I still remember laughing so hard I almost choked when Buddy pressed every button like a kid in a candy shop. The scene felt so perfect, so Buddy, that I was convinced it had to be based on a real detail from the Empire State Building. But no, not even close. Favreau built an entire fake elevator set just to deliver a joke that lasts a few seconds. An expensive, laborious choice, but perfectly aligned with the spirit of Elf innocent, mischievous, and blissfully unconcerned with the rules of the real world. So anyone who visits New York hoping to spam buttons like Buddy, prepare for disappointment. The real Empire State elevators do not come with a stock market long control panel. 10. The manager, Wanda, who is actually a man. Have you ever watched Elf for the third or fourth time and suddenly paused, thinking, wait, why is this guy named Wanda? If that's ever happened to you, you're not alone. At Gimbals, the store manager scolds Buddy with a no-nonsense voice and a posture that could silence an entire staff with a single glare. But on his name tag, Wanda. And that makes any sharp-eyed viewer raise an eyebrow. Because Wanda is clearly face-on love, a large, broad-shouldered man built like a double-door refrigerator, not someone who traditionally fits the name Wanda in any classic sense. Originally, the role was written for comedian Wanda Sykes, but she dropped out at the last minute, and Faison Love was brought in to replace her. Instead of changing the name tag, he insisted on keeping Wanda as an inside joke. And the best part, Favreau agreed. No explanation, no correction. It's the charm of elf a joke, hidden in plain sight, one you only notice after you've become familiar with the film. And when you finally catch it, it feels like discovering a secret tucked inside a Christmas gift you've opened year after year. 9. The hidden voices that shaped the entire North Pole. Anyone who has watched Elf on cold Christmas nights knows that the North Pole in the film feels oddly nostalgic, innocent, warm and reminiscent of the old animated specials we grew up with. But few people know that much of the soul of that world came from one person, Jon Favreau. He wasn't just the director, he voiced numerous quirky creatures throughout Buddy's journey. The anxious puffin calling out, "Buddy, you've gotta get out of the North Pole," that was Favreau. The narwhal rising from icy water to say the now iconic, meme-worthy goodbye bye, Buddy. Hope you find your dad, also Favreau. The best one may be the angry raccoon in Central Park. Favreau roared so enthusiastically during recording that he burst out laughing mid-growl, forcing the sound team to redo it because he couldn't contain himself. Through these hidden voices, Favreau gave the North Pole its personality, not just a setting, but a community of creatures who care, tease, and say goodbye to Buddy in their own ways. Even though he never physically appears on screen, Favreau is present in every greeting and farewell, the quiet heartbeat of the Elf universe. 8. The legendary 12-second burp was not Ferrell's. You remember the moment Buddy downs an entire 2-litre bottle of Coke and unleashes a 12-second burp so ridiculous and thunderous that audiences laugh until they can't breathe. It's one of the most iconic sound gags in Christmas movie history. Long absurd and so perfect it feels like only Buddy could have produced it. But the truth is far more surprising. Will Ferrell did not create that legendary burp. The sound was performed by Maurice LaMarche, the voice acting legend behind the Brain from Pinky and the Brain. In the studio, LaMarche simply took a deep breath and delivered the entire burp in one single take. No editing, no layering, no second attempt. One try was enough to make history. The hard part fell on Ferrell. While filming, he had to mime the entire burp, perfectly throat vibrations, breathing rhythm, and Buddy's goofy look of proud satisfaction. He did it so well that audiences were convinced the monstrous burp came straight from Buddy himself. A legend, created through both performance and voice magic. 7. The soda magic trick, how Buddy appears to chug a 2-litre Coke in one breath. The scene where Buddy lifts a 2-litre bottle of Coke and downs the whole thing in one breath is one of those moments that made me gasp and laugh at the same time. Everyone knows Buddy loves sugar, but this vacuum cleaner level drinking ability goes far beyond anything the human body should be capable of. And because it looks so natural, many people genuinely believed Ferrell actually inhaled an impossible amount of soda in one long, heroic gulp. But behind it was a brilliantly subtle filmmaking trick. The crew attached a hidden tube along the back of Ferrell's arm, allowing most of the soda to drain out as he pretended to drink. Each time Buddy tilted the bottle back, most of the Coke never went into his mouth at all. It escaped through the cleverly concealed tube, invisible from the camera's angle. Later, the VFX team digitally erased the tubing, creating the illusion that Buddy really was chugging the entire 2-litre in one monstrous swallow. In other words, not a superhuman stomach, just flawless stagecraft. A bit of movie magic, a bit of performance, and suddenly Buddy looks like the only creature alive capable of treating a 2-litre Coke, like a sip of water. 6. The Jack-in-the-Box nightmare and every jump scare was 100% real. If there's one scene that perfectly captures both Buddy's innocence and his hilariously helpless side, it's the moment he tests a series of Jack-in-the-Box toys in Santa's workshop. Every time the lid pops open, Buddy jerks violently, eyes wide mouth twisted in fear, and what makes the scene special is that none of those reactions were acting. Jon Favreau secretly kept a remote control. He controlled exactly when each lid would pop, but instead of pressing it at a steady rhythm so Ferrell could anticipate the timing. Favreau intentionally varied the beats, sometimes fast, sometimes slow, sometimes leaving Buddy waiting far longer than expected. The result, Ferrell had absolutely no idea when the doll would spring out. Every flinch, every grimace, every little startled grunt was the genuine reflex of a man being expertly pranked. And that authenticity made the scene one of the film's most subtly brilliant comedic moments. No dialogue, no explanation, just one oversized man and one old-fashioned toy creating pure Christmas magic. Favreau didn't just direct the scene. He trolled Ferrell with artistic precision. 5. The trolling that made James Caan break on camera. In Elf, James Caan was cast to be the steel wall counterweight to Will Ferrell's explosive energy. He's the kind of actor who can stiffen an entire frame with nothing more than a frown, and Favreau needed that seriousness to make Buddy shine. Throughout filming, Caan kept a flawless straight face, so much so that the crew admitted he's almost immune to Ferrell. Until the blood test scene. The moment a tiny needle pricks Buddy's finger, Ferrell suddenly unleashes a primal guttural scream so loud the whole room jolts. Nobody was warned. Nobody knew he would do it. And James Caan's reaction wasn't annoyance or confusion, but total collapse. He instantly turns his face away from the camera shoulders, shaking lips, pressed tight in a desperate attempt to hide the huge grin breaking through. It's one of the rare moments when the toughest man on set finally surrendered to Ferrell's chaotic holiday energy. A simple, unexpected troll, but one that gave the movie one of its most natural and lovable moments. 4. The chaotic Elf hockey scene that no one ever got to see. There's a scene in Elf that if it had made it into the theatrical cut might have become legendary, but instead it was buried in the editing room. It was a sequence where Buddy plays a hockey game with the elves on a frozen North Pole pond. At first, it's sweet and harmless tiny elves skating around Buddy, cheering him on like he's a clumsy but adorable giant. But the moment Buddy joins in, everything immediately turns disastrous. With his oversized body in a miniature world, Buddy becomes a Christmas-themed demolition ball on ice. He plows into elves like living bowling pins, turning the rink into a spectacular disaster zone. The puck flies out of frame. The goalie crashes into the snow. The crew reportedly burst into laughter, watching the wonderfully expensive chaos unfold. And then, Favreau cut it. Not because it wasn't funny, but because it disrupted the pacing of the film. Today, only a few messy snow patches in the final cut remain, as faint evidence a ghostly little gravestone for a great friendship between Buddy and ice hockey that audiences will never fully witness. A deleted scene, but an eternal backstage legend. 3. The stars who almost became Buddy. It's hard to imagine Elf without Will Ferrell, but the journey to finding the right Buddy was truly an adventure full of twists. When David Berenbaum wrote his first draft in 1993, the role of Buddy was designed for Chris Farley. The tone back then was much edgier, a chaotic SNL-style buddy comedy straight out of the 90s. That Buddy was fiery, unruly, and nothing like the Christmas angel we know today. But when Farley passed away in 1997, the project froze instantly. Hollywood tried pivoting. Jim Carrey was considered at one point, but he chose The Grinch, leaving Elf drifting in development limbo. Everything changed when Jon Favreau stepped in around 2000. He read the script, smiled, and rebuilt it from scratch. Buddy was no longer a sarcastic adult in an elf costume. He became a child trapped in a grown man's body. Innocent, radiant, and full of magic. At the time, Will Ferrell wasn't a box office draw. A $33 million bet on a not yet proven SNL alumnus. Any studio would have said no except New Line, and that gamble ended up redefining what a Christmas classic could be. 2. The $29 million offer, and why will Ferrell turn down Elf 2? Hollywood has an unwritten rule: if a film succeeds, make a sequel fast. And when Elf became a phenomenon, New Line offered a number that would make almost any actor falter: $29 million just for Will Ferrell to return for Elf 2. But Ferrell said no. No hesitation. No second thoughts. He didn't even wait for the contract to finish printing. His reason was painfully simple. He didn't want to break the purity of Buddy. The idea of middle-aged Buddy in a green suit trying to recreate old magic made him sad rather than excited. If the heart wasn't true, the jokes would feel forced, and Elf would lose the one thing that made it immortal, its pure innocence. Sometimes, stopping at the right moment, Ferrell said, is the only way to respect the story. So Elf stands alone like a Christmas present meant to be opened once, yet beautiful enough that it never needed a sequel. 1. The Christmas movie that still refuses to cool down. When Elf first premiered, no one expected it to make history. A modest $33 million budget, a former SNL comedian in a tight green and yellow outfit, it sounded like the recipe for a forgettable holiday comedy. But then, word of mouth exploded. People watched it, dragged friends to see it, then brought their families. Week after week, theatres stayed full. Elf finished with over $220 million worldwide, a box office explosion no one saw coming. But the real magic wasn't the initial success. It was the second life of the film. Every December, without ads, without re-releases, without any marketing push, Elf becomes a phenomenon all over again. TV ratings spike, streaming numbers climb, DVD, Blu-ray, and even 4K editions sell out. While many Christmas movies fade after a few seasons, Elf does the opposite. The older it gets, the more beloved it becomes. It's not just a movie, it's a tradition. A film people rewatch every year, not because they must, but because Christmas feels incomplete without it. When you watch Elf again, whether on the fuzzy TV of years past or a bright 4K screen today, you may realise the film was never just about a goofy elf running wild through New York. It's a miracle built from countless tiny things that seem insignificant on their own. But together, they turned Elf into more than a successful Christmas movie. They turned it into a collective memory, a ritual people return to every winter. Maybe that's why it lasts, because it reminds us the world can still be gentle, that innocence still has a place, and that adults sometimes forget how to believe in magic. If you discovered something new about Elf today, tell me, which moment makes you smile every time you remember it? The spaghetti and syrup breakfast, the insane snowball fight, or the legendary greeting? Santa, I know him. Leave a comment below, and if you want to keep exploring the hidden stories behind the films that shaped our childhood, don't forget to follow. Christmas may come and go, but movies like Elf, if we keep telling their stories, will live forever.